Hello, welcome. So today we have a short little Q&A for reaching 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. That's very exciting for me. So we will just get into the questions. We do have some questions that fit really well together as essentially a language learning journey. So how old was I when I first started learning languages, and how many languages have I started to learn? So the first language that I tried to learn, my first language love, was German, actually. So my mom studied German in college, in university, and so we always kind of had German around, I guess you could say. There are things that I will go to my grave knowing in German, even if I never touched the language again. We did, at times try to study it actively. At times we would, try to read things like graded readers or children's books. We never really stuck to it. We didn't have any strong immersion or anything like that. And so I never really got past the beginner stage. I was a fairly strong beginner at certain points. My speaking was actually fairly good because that was most of what I practiced. When I was a kid, the internet existed, but certainly not in the form that it is now, and I wasn't really allowed to use the internet unfettered until I was much older. And so there was not really any opportunity to consume content in German unless it was something that we owned. And so, we did have a certain hodgepodge of resources, but obviously I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, so I started learning German very, very ineffectively and periodically at a very young age, probably 5 or something like that. But yeah, definitely never got anywhere near fluency, but I have always wanted to learn languages, definitely always intended to learn languages. I really wanted to study abroad in Germany and hopefully, become fluent. That did not happen for assorted reasons, but yeah, I was very passionate about it. And so I would also occasionally dabble in other things. I would decide, I really want to learn this. I think that we got Rosetta Stone from the library one time and did a couple weeks of Spanish even, but all I remember is learning things like dog and cat and stuff like that, but definitely never seriously learned any other languages until I was older and started learning Spanish. Oh, no, I am totally lying. ASL. So my sister studied ASL in university, and I studied with her for the first few terms. I was still in high school at that point, so I didn't really have too much going on, and I did all of the vocabulary and practice with her for the first, I think, 3 terms. And so if you've studied ASL, I basically got to the point where they're doing qualifiers, and so I had quite a lot of vocabulary and could follow really, really well. I couldn't sign that well because I didn't have, qualifiers and a lot of the more nuanced, structure, but I could understand fairly well, but that has mostly, almost entirely atrophied. I do still try to follow a lot of deaf content creators and people who sign on social media. I will still absolutely recognize vocabulary and that sort of thing, but I do not know ASL at all. But so that was actually the second language. Third language was Spanish. I was 26 or 27 when I first started really trying to learn Spanish. And yeah, here we are several years later. So that is, counting Spanish and French, we are now at German, ASL, Spanish, and French. So 4 languages. And then I've dabbled, a lot in other things, but I don't count that. So why did I start learning Spanish and French? Did I have any specific inspirations of who inspired me to learn these languages? Strangely, I do not have a good reason for any of the languages that I've learned or tried to learn. Honestly, I was trying to remember why I started learning Spanish, and I do not remember. truly, I don't think I had a reason. Like, for one thing, I think I had no idea. No, I don't think. I know that I had no idea how difficult it was going to be, or not difficult, but just time intensive. So I think I had this idea that I could like quickly get Spanish out of the way before learning other languages, which is comical now to think about. So I think I just was like, it'll be useful for traveling. There's so much media, obviously. I really like literature, and so I was interested in Spanish literature. That wasn't really like the reason, but it was definitely a reason. And so I think that was pretty much why I just was like, well, it'll be really useful, and I am, vaguely interested in it. It's never been like a strong pull in the past to Spanish. Obviously I have that now. I'm very glad that I kind of accidentally started learning Spanish, but yeah, I did not have any specific inspiration to learn Spanish. There was this girl when I was a kid, one of my sister's friends was learning Spanish, and I thought she was the coolest person on the planet. You know how you have those people that you idolize when you're little? And so for a while when I was younger, I wanted to learn Spanish because of her. So yeah, I mean, we're not friends. Like I don't know her anymore, but 8-year-old me would probably be really happy to hear that I am finally learning Spanish. So anyway, French is kind of similar. I don't have any specific reason. I just love the way that French sounds, and not in like a romanticizing way. This is the kind of thing that I think is funny about French, is that somehow French got this perception of being so beautiful, so lyrical, so romantic, and like German and Russian and Arabic and those kind of languages have the perception of being really harsh. And I feel like French is at least as harsh as they are, and I like it for that reason. Like, I like all of those languages. I really enjoy, I don't think that they are harsh all the time. I don't think any language is harsh all the time, but they can be. But I really like those, like, kind of soft languages that have a big range of like expression. And honestly, I think French fits in that category just as well as German and Russian and everything. So yeah, anyway, I love the sound of French, but not in the way that a lot of people do, in that they're like, oh, it's so romantic. Like, I like French rap and hip hop and like French people cussing and stuff. Like, I don't know which language was easier to learn, Spanish or French. This one is not really fair to assess since I started learning Spanish first, and my Spanish is like intermediate at this point. So French was much easier. Like, I am finding it much easier to study French, but if I had, if I was capable of putting them on equal footing, Spanish would have been easier for sure. Maybe not once you got kind of advanced, because I have heard that French grammar is a little bit easier than Spanish grammar, like a little bit less tenses and moods and that sort of thing. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I have heard that. But just for straightforward beginning stuff, Spanish is completely phonetic. What you see is what you get as far as spelling. It's a very straightforward language to get started in. And obviously you have a ton of cognates in Spanish and French if you already speak English, but I do think that they're a little bit easier to recognize in Spanish because the pronunciation isn't quite as different maybe. So yeah, I do think Spanish is easier if you already speak English, but they are very similar. So do I plan on learning other languages, and what are other languages that I want to learn besides Spanish and French? Yes, I absolutely plan on learning other languages. Honestly, I foresee learning languages being part of my life for the rest of my life. Obviously it will probably wax and wane in intensity. I don't necessarily expect to be able to spend 3 or 4 hours a day for the rest of my life learning languages like I am now, but I don't think that I'll ever, at this point, I can't picture myself ever being like, I'm done learning languages, So some other languages that I am very, very interested in learning at this time Brazilian Portuguese is definitely one. I am not going to start it though until I am quite advanced in Spanish because I don't want to mix them. And that one I would definitely just jump straight into watching things, reading things, listening to things, because I already follow several Brazilian Portuguese people on Instagram and I can quite often understand quite a bit, especially if they have subtitles. I usually can get the gist of what's going on, so I know that I could very easily, make that jump and have easily comprehensible input. But again, I just want to wait until I'm fully ready because I don't want to mix them up. So Brazilian Portuguese for sure. And then Mandarin, I definitely want to at least start Mandarin. Obviously until I get started with a language and find my own connection to the language, I don't know how far I will want to go with it. Whether I will want to be, fluent in these languages, I don't know. But I love the characters of Chinese languages. I think they are just incredible. And I would love to know more of the history of how the language is developed. And yeah, so I would love to study it. I am also somewhat interested in Russian. I definitely am interested in Persian or Farsi. I would be interested in Hindi or Bengali or some other language from India. Obviously, they're not interchangeable, but I have heard that Hindi has vastly more resources. But yeah, I would need to do a lot more research, prior to embarking on one of those. Certainly, indigenous languages are a major interest, and I think I would like to potentially settle somewhere in the world prior to determining what I would like to learn, because if I do end up living somewhere where there's an indigenous population, close by, then obviously that would be the language that I would be the most interested in learning. So yeah, that was the long answer. The short answer is yes, I am definitely interested in learning more languages, and no, I do not know which ones they will be. What language learning achievement or experience are you most proud of? For me, finishing my first book in Spanish. That is probably mine as well. I had read graphic novels before, and that was a big one as well because, it took me a month to read the first graphic novel, and it felt like a big, fat book. And so that was a huge achievement. But I think that chapter book, and honestly, it was a 2-month period in which I read my first 2 chapter books that were Narnia, the first 2 Narnia books, and then I read The Hunger Games the next month. And so in a 2-month period, I went from not having read any books in Spanish to reading 3 books, and one of them was, fat and a YA book, not even a chapter book. And so that was the turning point, I think, for my language learning, the point at which I was I can actually do this. I may actually at some point be able to use the Spanish language. That was absolutely wild for me. So once someone hits a higher level of listening, say B2, and wants to get to C1 or C2, how would you suggest this person do more intensive or extensive listening? So bearing in mind that I am just at this stage myself with Spanish, I am certainly not an expert, but if I can only choose one, I will always choose extensive, because I just think, the vast majority of the work of acquiring a language is done by your subconscious, is done in ways that we cannot even understand or force to happen. And so it's important to constantly be feeding that. And I think extensive listening, extensive reading is just, a better way to do that if you can only choose one, because for one thing, you're probably going to have time to do a lot more extensive listening than intensive, so you're going to be able to consume a lot more. And I think it's just, what our brains were, evolved to do is to assimilate all of that information, and so they just need to be let loose. But with that being said, I do think intensive listening and intensive reading can be beneficial. They can increase the amount that you're actually paying attention, because, obviously there's always the risk of just zoning out entirely if you're, not doing intensive stuff. And, you know, it helps you pick out some of that finer stuff that you're missing when you're listening. And so yeah, I mean, I would say both, but I would always choose extensive over intensive. Okay, so what subscription are you currently enjoying most or getting the most out of for language learning? So right now I have 3 language learning related subscriptions. One is my audiobook subscription, which is to the app Storytel. I have the Mexico one, and that is about $9 a month, I believe. I also have a Dreaming Spanish premium subscription right now, which is $8 a month, and I have well, it's not really a subscription, but it's kind of a subscription. I had purchased like 2 years of access to Langalia, which is where I am taking my Spanish like courses right now. So all 3 of those I am absolutely loving. I think that they are great for different reasons. Langalia is really helping me, you know, iron out some things that I haven't picked up yet from input that I do think I will pick up, but you know, I'm just trying to help the process along. Dreaming Spanish has been really, really great for listening to videos at work or other times when I might want kind of a slower video, something more targeted. And I have really been enjoying those videos, and I also love that it tracks your time for you so that when I'm stopping and starting and watching a whole bunch of different videos all throughout my workday, I don't have to try to keep track of that myself. I can just look at the end of the day, and that's great. That's obviously a petty thing, but it is great. And you don't need the premium for that. I just find that all the videos that I want to watch are mostly premium videos, so I decided to just get the subscription for a couple months, try to watch as many as I can. So, but my ultimate number one subscription is always my audiobook subscription. I listen to books on here every day, like pretty much every day, unless I happen to be listening to an audiobook from my library instead. But, you know, I've mentioned before that my library does have Spanish books, but not the selection that I would want, and most of them are translated from English into Spanish, like, you know, Sarah J. Maas books or something like that, or classics like, you know, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. They have some of his books and that sort of thing. But to get like audiobooks for my commute and that sort of thing, Storytel just has so many more options and so much more native Spanish content. So that would be my answer. A couple YouTube questions. So what is something you've learned about yourself since starting your YouTube journey? I think my biggest thing probably, and this is not really like something you can sum up easily, but is that, you know, I have to be flexible, but also somewhat of a planner, basically. So I, for a long, long time, was just trying to make videos whenever I had time to make them, and I would, you know, start making a video, and then truly, if I wasn't like doing something else, like I had to leave my house or go to work or something like that, it would just be like 9 hours, 12 hours later, I would finish the video and I would upload it. Like, I was incapable of like managing my time, and I would get hyper focused, and just, if I started the video, it was very hard for me to stop. Like, I would go straight from filming the video to editing the video to uploading it to trying to do my subtitles and, you know, make it public right then. And I think to some extent, like, there was nothing wrong with that. Like, I was not practiced enough yet at making videos to be able to sustain an upload schedule. So to some extent, that was totally fine. But once I put myself on an upload schedule and tried to like edit ahead and have videos scheduled to go up, I actually found that I was so much more creative because I didn't have to be like trying to put out a video as fast as possible. Like, I had time to think about things in order to make a video that I was actually happy with. But then I will still have times where a video idea occurs to me and I am like, oh, push everything, we're doing this instead. And it's always best to take advantage of creative energy when it arrives. But yeah, there was a long time where I thought I would never be capable of putting myself on an upload schedule, because I was like, when a video is ready, I'm like so excited and I just want to put it up there. But it ended up being the best thing for me. So I don't know that that was something I learned about myself, but maybe. The other thing, and this isn't really about me either, but the fact that actually seeing myself on camera all the time, I thought that it might be bad for me, and people have said, like other people have said that it is bad for them, and I totally understand that. Like the idea of looking at your face for hours and hours and hours on end to edit, I totally get it. But for me, it has been a little bit the opposite of like, I see myself in truly the most hideous faces that you could ever imagine when the editing software pauses on a specific screenshot or something, and it'll just be the most god-awful face you've ever seen in your life. And, I see myself from all different angles, and it's really just kind of normalized it to me, like it has normalized the way that I just look, and I feel very neutrally about the way that I look now in a way that I don't think that I did before. So yeah, I don't know. I guess you could say that I've just learned that I just am a human person who exists in a physical form, and while that is terrible at times, it's also just the way it is. And so yeah, who were my biggest inspirations upon starting my YouTube journey? So one of them, definitely specifically for language learning, was Polyglot Progress. Abigail is a wonderful person, a wonderful YouTuber who I was really inspired by how much she just shares in her language learning journey and how open she is about certain aspects of that. And she was really the first vlogger that I saw in the language learning community who wasn't solely making language learning advice videos, because I really struggled at first, and that's why, to some extent, why I made initially my channel was together. I used to do language learning and booktube on the same channel. No one was really doing, and I mean, there probably were, I just wasn't seeing it, but there weren't a lot of people doing non-advice videos in the language learning space. Non-advice and non-aesthetic. It was usually either, very much advice videos, like 5 ways to improve your Spanish speaking, or advice. You know what advice videos are. Why am I explaining this to you? Or hyper aesthetic, incredibly beautiful curated study videos, which are fine. Like, I have no problem with those, but that's not me. That's never going to be me. I never wanted to have this curated thing, and I do think that there's a place for that. Potentially it can be inspirational, it can be really fun to watch, but again, it's just not me. So having someone like Polyglot Progress who did just very neutral, like, this is just my life, these are clips of me studying, was so inspiring. And that was really kind of what gave me the confidence to start making vlogs about language learning. So yeah, I think definitely to pinpoint one person who was the biggest inspiration would definitely be her. So thanks, Abigail. We've never spoken, but yeah. Okay, I think last question is favorite book genre and why. And this is such a tough question. I'm going to possibly cheat and say speculative fiction. So that's kind of like anything that's not based fully in reality. So it's, speculating. So it could be kind of more science fiction, kind of more fantasy. And I just love the creativity and the thought process in it. Like, my preference is kind of when they tackle societal topics like, capitalism, racism, classism, the future of technology, stuff like that. But I'm always up for just a good old fantasy or sci-fi as well, without the, greater societal topics, if it's done really well. I also do really like thrillers. They are always a good time. Sometimes they can be really, really thought-provoking, but often, more so just pure entertainment. And then the other type that I generally gravitate towards would be just kind of like literary fiction, which it's hard, that's not really a genre, but kind of contemporary fiction, you know, sometimes some classics. Now I'm just going to be showing you my bookshelves. So yeah, those would be my top 3. But yeah, if I had to pick one and only one, it would be speculative fiction. So thank you guys so much for your questions, and thank you for your time watching this video, asking questions, etc. And I will see you in the next video.